All right, in this video, I'm going to be covering pages G5 and G6 from your workbook. We're talking about degree measures. Then we're going to talk about coterminal angles. We're really going to be talking about them in angle measures in terms of degrees, right? Degree measures. So I'm going to do a handful of these problems. Before we really get started, though, on our coordinate plane here, this is 0 degrees, right? So if we have an angle, and an angle is made up of two rays. So here's a ray. If we take that ray and we lay it here on the x-axis, so that needs to be a little bit flatter. And then we have this second ray that determines then what our angle measure is, right? And so we grab this ray and we place it, and the wider it opens, the larger our degree is. Once we get straight up, the second ray is straight up, that's 90 degrees. Now we're into what we call quadrant 2, and as we move along here, if we end up here straight across the x-axis, that is a straight line of my two rays, therefore 180 degrees. We keep venturing. 270. If we make it all the way around, that's 360. Similarly, if we start and we open this way, these are just negative degrees, but it's still between 0 and 90 in this first quadrant. It's just between 0 and negative 90. Negative 90 and negative 180, negative 180 and 270, negative 270 and 360. Okay, so there's our angle measures. If you want, you can kind of make yourself a quick, and then all the way back to 360. So when we look at where 225 degrees would be, it is larger than our 90, it's larger than our 180, but it's not bigger than 270. So it's somewhere in this angle. So what I'm going to do is take 225, and I'm going to subtract 180. And the reason I'm doing this is because I need to see just how much bigger it is than 180. So that's 45. Well, 45 is half of 90. So this is halfway in between the 180 and 270. So that's where our ray goes, right? And there's this ray here. We generally don't draw it in. It's kind of an implied one. What we're going to do is show that we've opened in the positive direction. And we're also going to mark this as 45 degrees so that we can see that it is 45 degrees bigger than 180. Okay, let me do another positive angle. Let's do 305. Okay, so again, we've got 90, 180, 270, and if we make it all the way around, that's 360. So I know that I'm bigger than 90, bigger than 180, bigger than 270, so my ray has spun all the way around. It's somewhere in this quadrant over here. We call that the fourth quadrant, but it's not all the way to 360. So what I'm going to do this time, because I just want to show you that you can do either, is I'm going to take 360 and subtract my angle of 305. So that means this is 55 degrees shy . 55 degrees shy of 360. And again, I've opened in the positive direction. Now, I could have put 35 here because I'm 35 degrees beyond 270. So either of those works. It's not wrong to put both. You don't need both, but you do need one of them. Okay, jumping ahead to number 6 here, I have 380 degrees. So we've got our 90, our 180, 270, and you don't have to do this every time, but 360. So this 380 degrees actually if I take my ray and I start spinning, it's actually going to spin, all the way around to 360, but then it keeps going, and the question is how much further does it go? So it goes an additional 20 degrees. And it's important that, I wouldn't draw 20 degrees up here. So to be aware that you have 90 degrees kind of in this quadrant, there's 90 degrees and being somewhat representative. Just to be perfectly clear, though, we do write that 20 there. Now, if I just drew this, that would be a 20-degree angle, which is not what I'm trying to represent. So what I'm actually going to do is take and draw and go past it and all the way back around, now indicating that I've done a full lap plus an additional 20. Okay. All right, so now let's talk about some negative angle measures, like negative 340. So I see that I've got a negative angle that I'm working with. So now I'm going to label it. I'm going to go the opposite direction, and I'm going to label them as negative. So I am going to go this direction this time and land about here, and there's 20 degrees. So I'm now indicating based on this arrow here, this little spiral, if you will, I'm indicating that I'm opening in the opposite direction. And this 20 says I've opened all the way and I'm 20 degrees shy of negative 360. So that's where, or how we can indicate negative 340. Now I want to take a quick moment here. And I want to take a look at the last two that I just did. And so we're going to look at number 2. And we're going to look at number 6. Those two actually look very similar. Notice that the ray, right, we're talking about this ray, is in the same spot on both of them, and they both contain that 20 underneath. These two angles are what we call coterminal. Coterminal. And we're going to have a discussion about coterminal here in just a moment. But coterminal angles are angles that, when drawn, land in the same spot. It doesn't mean they're the same angle. It means they land in the same spot. These two are different angles, but they land in the same spot when drawn out. Therefore, they are coterminal, right? This one opened in the negative direction. This one opened in the positive direction and did an entire lap. There's a lot of angles that are coterminal with them. The angle just 20 degrees would also be coterminal with those. And we could come up with really an infinite number of angles that are coterminal with that. Okay, let's do just a few more angles here. Well, let's just do one more. Let's do negative 570. So we're in the negative direction. Negative 90, 180, 270. And negative 360. So it's clear that I go past negative 360, right? So I'm opening backwards and I go at least a lap. The question is how much further, right? How much further do I go? So to determine that, what I'm actually going to do is take negative 570 and I'm going to add 360 to it. And that's negative 210, which means I need to go an additional 210 degrees. So then I'm going to go here, and this is 30 because I am 30 degrees beyond the negative 180 mark, which actually isn't 180 anymore, right? It is 360 plus 180. So it is now negative 540 once we've done a complete lap. So once we start talking negative direction and we start talking more than a lap, things start to get a little bit more convoluted, a little bit more difficult. But there's that process. Here we're just going in the opposite direction. We're just asked to determine what is that angle measure. So let's do all 4 of these just real quick. So first, that says 120. If you can't see that very well, it probably looks better in your workbook. One, we need to know that it is opening in the negative direction, and it is 120 degrees, so it is negative 120 degrees. This right here is our little degree symbol. Number 8, we are opening in the positive direction, And here we have an 80. This is not an 80-degree angle. This is saying I'm 80 degrees shy or short of this line, which is 180 degrees. So what number is 80 degrees shy or short of 180? Well, that's 100 degrees. All right. Here we have opened in the positive direction. We have done a complete lap. So there I've got 360 plus an additional 90, 180, 270, plus, and let me actually do different colors here. Grab a different color. Red for you now. Right, I'll even write this in red for you. So what I've got highlighted or, outlined in blue is 360 degrees. It's a full lap. What I've got outlined for you in red is 270. I went 3 quadrants. And then let's go ahead and do a green. That's this last piece right here, and we see that it is 50. So I add another 50. So I'm just going to add those 3 numbers together. So 360, 270, and 50. And I see that this is a 680-degree angle. Okay. Woo, we're going to do something similar here. Let's start with blue. So that's a lap. Oh, I just made a shape there I didn't mean to make. Okay, so there's a full lap. That's 360. Right, and then we're going to go just to here this time. That's 180. And the reason I stopped there is because this 170 that I'm given, let me switch colors here. Let me do green. This 170 degrees is actually starting here. It's this whole piece right here, or this piece of my angle. So it's actually given to me at a much wider spread, so I have to add 170 there. So I'm going to do 360 plus 180 plus 170. And if we really process that, it really ends up being 10 degrees shy of 2 full laps. 2 full laps would be 720 degrees. This is 710. Okay, so I told you we'd talk about coterminal. Find a positive and negative coterminal angle for each given. They are an angle that, if I graph them, would be in the same spot. So if I graphed 240 degrees, it would be, wow, that's terrible. Let's try that again. It would be over here. It would be 30 degrees shy of 270 or 60 degrees beyond 180. So what I need is an angle that works with that. So one angle, I could go backwards and I could go negative 90 plus another 30. So that would be negative 120. I could do an entire lap, 360 plus another 180 plus another 60. Wow, I'm just making all sorts of shapes here. So 360 plus 180 plus 60, or 360 plus 240. And I'm going to kind of outline for you a quicker way to do this than graphing on the next problem. But 360 and 240, so a 600 degrees. So these 3 angles are all coterminal. Okay, we don't need to graph them every time. So let's look at number 12, 180 degrees. One thing we can do is just take a lap away. So we can do 180 and we can subtract 360 from it. So 180 minus 360 is a negative. I should do that over here, excuse me. Minus 360 is a negative 180. So negative 180 degrees is coterminal with 180 degrees. The other thing we can do then is take 180 and add 360. So if I take 180 and add 360, we're going to end up with 540 degrees. And so there's our third. So we've got 3 angles that are coterminal. We came up with 1 negative and 1 positive angle that are coterminal. Notice my process. I subtracted 360 once, and I added 360. Okay. Let's look at number 13. We can do that same thing. We can do negative 120 plus 360, and we can do negative 120 minus 360. So if we do that, and I'm actually going to just kind of do that real quick, we end up with 240 degrees And we end up with negative 480 degrees. I want you to take a look at 11 and 13. They're really the same problem, because we already established that 240 and negative 120 were coterminal. We did it again. We've also added 600 and negative 480 to the list, so all of those angles now are coterminal. Okay. What happens when the number is larger, like negative 675? So if I take negative 675 and I add 360 to it, I take negative 675 and I add 360 to it, I end up with negative 315. So the directions ask me to find one positive and one negative. Well, this one's negative, so I'm not going to go and now subtract. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take negative 315 and I'm going to add another 360 to it, because I'm not in the positive world yet. So I'm going to add again. So I've got now 45 degrees. Okay. All right, let's skip those last two. Let's come down here. State if the given angles are coterminal. What you need to determine it to be, in order for them to be coterminal, are they 360 degrees apart or some multiple of 360, right? So they could be 360 degrees apart. They could be 720 degrees apart. 1080. Okay. So these two angles right here, if I take 380 and I subtract 20, that's 360. So yes, they are. If I take these two angles right here, and I take 55 minus a negative 245, they are 300 degrees apart, so no. This should really be over here. And so all we're doing here is determining, are they that many degrees apart? So if I take, and I could go the other direction, negative 685 minus 35 is negative 720. And as long as it's either a positive or negative version of one of these numbers, then yes. Because you can either go like forward around the circle or you can go backwards around the circle. It doesn't matter. You still land in that same spot. Okay, so 430 minus 70 is 360. So yes, these two would be 820 minus 100 would be 720. So yes. And finally, 85 and negative 115. So if I do, those two are 200 degrees apart. So no. Okay. You now have enough information to complete the newest Schoology assignment. Good luck.